All right. Let's look at chapter 1 now. Should look at chapter 1, and chapter 1 is on introduction to taxation. Introduction to taxation. So the topic list of this chapter will first look at the definition of taxation. Then we'll look at reasons for introduction of taxes. Then we'll look at canons of taxation. Then examples of taxes. Then classifications and characteristics of taxes. And overview of the Malawi tax system. And lastly, we'll finalize the whole chapter by looking at the history of taxation in Malawi. Now, let's look at what are the learning outcomes. By the end of this chapter, you as students are supposed to define taxation, explain the functions of taxation, explain the canons of taxation, state the examples of taxes, classify taxes, and lastly, describe the Malawi tax system. Right. That's basically the learning outcome or the learning objective of this chapter. So let's start off by looking at the overview of the chapter, right? So in this chapter, a short outline of the Malawi taxation is presented, beginning with the definition of tax and taxation, followed by discussions of various reasons why governing bodies would over-impose taxes on its citizen. So basically, that's what we're going to look at. First, look at the definition of tax and taxation, then look at why actually governing bodies actually impose taxes on its citizen. After that, we will look also at the qualities of a good tax system, also known as canons, as well as characteristics and classes into which taxes are grouped and explained too. Then lastly, at the end, we'll actually look at a brief overview of the Malawi taxation system. So basically, that's the overview of this chapter. Now that we have actually looked at the overview of this chapter, let's start off by looking at what is taxation. First thing, we should know that taxation and tax are two different things. So we have the term tax, right, and taxation. These are two different things. Now let's look at what taxation is, then we'll look at what tax is. Right. So taxations are impositions made by the governing bodies on income and worth of people under their jurisdiction. Right? To impose is to charge, right? So we're saying that these are impositions made by the government, right? Or governing bodies on incomes and worth of people under their jurisdiction. We're not looking at the term jurisdiction, right? We're just talking about something to do with an area, right? Or a parameter in where the law can apply, right? Just basically an area or a parameter in where the law can apply. So we're saying that if there's an act, right, or a law or a rule, right, and it can apply to a certain area, that's the jurisdiction of that law. So what we're saying taxation is basically an imposition made by governing bodies. It might be the government, the central government, the local government, and so on and so forth, right? But these ones are impositions made by governing bodies on the incomes. So we are making these charges on the incomes and worth of persons. And for the term, for the sake of the manual and the sake of the taxation, when you're looking at persons, we are not only looking at the human person, we are also looking at the corporate person. All right. If you did your silo, you know that a company is also a legal person, right? So when we're talking about person, we're looking at a person as a human being, and also corporate person also can fall within this. Can fall within this. So that's basically it. That's basically it. Right. Uh, so governing bodies include the state, local authorities, and central government. So it's not really limited to the state, right? But also local authorities like Zomba, City Council, or those local authorities can impose some taxes, right? For example, Masite rates, right, are some of the taxes that can fall under the local authority. The central government can charge fees and other taxes. So we are looking at taxation as imposition made by governing bodies. While tax is the actual fee that we are paying. Taxation could be seen as a system, right? Taxation could be seen as a system in where the governing bodies are imposing, there's an imposition on the income and worth of persons under their jurisdiction, right? Under their jurisdiction. While when you're looking at tax is the actual money that we are paying. So tax is a fee charged or levied by government on products, income, and activities. So we should be able to differentiate, right? Taxation being a system in which governing bodies are actually imposing or making impositions on the incomes and worth of persons. While tax is actually the actual fee that is charged by government on products or incomes or activities. You just have to know the difference. Taxation being a system of collecting money, while tax is the actual money collected. Actual money collected. All right. Now that we've seen the difference, all right, let's move on. Why introduce taxes? Why is the reason taxes were introduced? That's the question. Why should you burden your citizen by taking part of their money, right, from them? Isn't that harsh? Right. So let us look at the reasons why taxes were introduced. The first reason is to raise revenue to provide public goods and services and for running the government. We know a government as a body, right, does not generate income or does not have a source of income to run the government, to provide goods and services that are free, like the army, like the hospitals, schools, etc. So how does the government raise this money, right? They raise this money by collecting from its citizens. This is what? In form of taxes. Although we might also source some money from maybe grants and borrowings or and so on and so forth, but the main source should be from collecting from its citizens. That's the first thing. First reason is for to raise revenue for the government, right? To provide public goods and services and to running of the government. That's the first. The second thing is redistribution of wealth. So this is what happens when it comes to tax, right? More taxes is collected from higher earners than lower earners to provide public goods or services. So the thing is, anthu ena ake Malawi muno ali ndalama zambiri kuposa anzawo, right? Might be the minority of the people have a lot of money. These are the billionaires of the country, the likes of Bushiri, right? And so on and so forth, right? So, and other companies, right? We might look at National Bank and other banks. They might have a lot of money, right? So we have the minority, muntu wa kumuzi wina wake, that even survives on less than 10,000 a month. They can survive with less than 10,000 a month. That's how much money they can make, even less than that. Even 5,000 also haipeza. So the importance of tax is that you are taking a lot of money from these high earning people, right? And less from these guys to provide public goods or services. Things that everyone can use. Even the rich can use, even the poor can use, including the roads, hospitals, and so forth. So it's like we are taking a lot from the high earners, right, and give them to the small earners, because a lot of these public services are used by these less earners. That's why we call it redistribution of wealth. Ndikutengako ndalama zambiri za anthu olemerawa ndikuwagayirako anthu osaukawa in form of providing goods and services that are public, that anyone can use. Sikuti kutenga ndalamazi ndikuwapasadi anthu ndalama, no. But they are providing or building stuff that are free that these guys can also use. That's to do with redistribution of wealth. Another thing is that protecting local industry from foreign competition by charging taxes on imported goods to make the prices high so that people can buy domestically produced products. There has been a campaign known as Buy Malawi, right? Buy Malawi. What is it all about, right? What is this all about? So, this is to do with making sure that we're looking at protecting local industry from foreign competition. So this is what happens. A big company can just come to Malawi and open its business. What happens is that the local companies will suffer. Or foreign companies cannot open a company right here in Malawi, but just kunja kwawo komweko, right? Ndekuti amakhala kuti tima business ting'oting'onoti tikupanga safa because katundu wanthu awa amakhala kuti ma global companies, meaning that they enjoy economies of scale and their items are slightly cheaper. It means that these infant local companies cannot compete with this. Everyone wants cheaper stuff. So what the government does is that whenever you are importing stuff, they impose some taxes called custom duty, excess duty, and so on and so forth. Right. Ndekuti katundu amene munamugula, for example, 3,000, right? Akamaza fika ku Malawi, ndikufuna kugulisidwa ali pa 25,000. It means ngati katundu yemwe kumalawi kuno tikumapanga kumagulisa 25,000 20,000. It means watuyu akhala cheaper. It means that our businesses, our local business, are being protected from such events. So that's basically it, right? We are protecting local industry from foreign competition. That's one reason why the government imposes. Another thing is to discourage consumption of certain products considered harmful or undesirable, such as cigarettes, by levying excise duty. Right? Zinazochitika zoona kuti pali akatundu ena ake boma limadziwa kuti they are harmful to a person, right? Cut with the health of a person, koma sikuti amaletsa. Alcohol, cigarettes. These are harmful to the citizens of the country. So what they do to discourage people is to charge more taxes. Kuti zikhale expensive. Vuto lake ndoti Amalawi, right? Akugula zinthu ngati izi. They are expensive, but people are still buying them. Koma they have tried their best because chikhala kuti anali katundu wina of the similar nature, amapeza kuti would have been cheaper. But because akuona kuti katundu iyi are harmful to or undesirable to its citizen, amapanga charge extra taxes on those products. And the other reasons why taxes are introduced is basically it is used as a fiscal tool to make adjustments to the economy. If you have done economics before, you know about fiscal policies, right? Right? Fiscal policies. So this is used as a fiscal tool to actually make adjustments to the policy. So how do they do this, right? For example, right, a tax rate can be increased in the time of inflation to reduce the taxpayers' spending power, and can be reduced during the time of recession to increase spending. So then where the government sees a lot of people have a lot of money circulating, right? People have a lot of money, or there's a lot of money in circulation. What they'll do, they will actually impose taxes so that they reduce the amount of money circulating, or they reduce the spending power of people, right? Koma ikakhala kuti it's time for recession, what they do, they reduce taxes so that it encourages people to spend because they have a lot of disposable income. So if they have a lot of disposable income, it means a lot of companies will be producing. That way, it is actually enhancing the economy of the country. So it is acting as a fiscal tool to adjust the economy. All right. So that's it. Now that we've looked at why taxes are imposed, let us look at canons of taxation. When you are looking at canons, these are just characteristics or qualities of a good tax system or a good taxation system. So canons of taxation refer to qualities which a good tax system must have. So we're looking at qualities or characteristics that a good tax system must have. So a good tax system should have a proper combination of all kinds of tax having different canons. So we know that a tax system is basically a correction, a combination of different taxes that are there. Mutokandi, tax system, you can have payee, corporate taxes, you can have estate duties, excess duties. Those are different types of taxes. So in this tax system, they want to make sure that you have also a combination of different qualities or different characteristics, right? Ndekuti imeneyo has is basically has a balance of a good tax system, a good tax system. So you want to make sure we want to make sure, for example, payee has one particular quality that maybe VAT does not have, and VAT has a certain quality that payee does not have, so on and so forth. So let us look at these canons. But when we look at these qualities or canons, we should know that there are some economists that came up with these canons. The first formula economists that actually suggested the canons of taxation was Adam Smith. Adam Smith is a popular economist and suggested 4 qualities of a good tax system, or 4 canons of a good tax system. The first being equality, also called equity or fairness. Second being certainty. Third being conveniency, and fourth being economy. Right? These are the 4 canons of taxations suggested by an economist called Adam Smith. But also, other economists also added their own canons, right? Like Bastable, right? And other economists also suggest other canons or qualities of a good tax system. And these include elasticity, productivity, simplicity, diversity, flexibility, and comprehensibility. So these are additional canons suggested by other economists, including Bastable. So let us look at those suggested by Adam Smith. We talked about equity or equality. So when we talk about equality, we're saying that a good tax system should be fair in its application. It should be fair in its application, and taxes should be based on individuals' ability to pay tax. Tax should be fair in its application and should be based on individuals' ability to pay tax. Munthu amene akulandira ndalama zochepa mudule misonkho yochepa so as well, right? Amene akulandira ndalama zambiri mudulenso misonkho yambiri, right? That's being fair. That's to do with equity, right? Now let us look at certainty. What does certainty mean? It means that taxpayers must be sure of what is expected of them regarding what they are expected to pay, when, where, and how. Muzikhala mukudziwa how much money I'll pay. That's being certain, right? A good tax system should make sure that taxpayers already know what amount they are supposed to pay, when and where and how they should pay it. That tax system is certain, has certainty, right? And that's another canon that was suggested by Adam Smith. Another thing is to do with conveniency. Conveniency is all about that taxpayers should pay taxes in a convenient manner, right? Because when we're talking about convenient, we're talking about a sort of I would say that synonymous word with convenient is basically, I would say, I can't think of another word to use in terms of convenience. Koma tikufotokoza kuti taxpayer akamapereka msonkho wake, right, azipereka when it is like the right time. Because we're talking about convenience is basically the right time. I would just say the right time. So taxpayer should pay taxes in a convenient manner. As a result, the payment of tax should be related to the time at which the taxpayer has the money. So taxes should be charged when the person has the money. Osati kumpanga charge alibe drama, right? Munthu alibe drama kumuza you have to pay this amount. That means what will they pay? It's not convenient for them. But when they receive the money, that's when the taxes should be due, right? They should be due when they receive the money. That's convenience. And lastly, economy. The thing to do with economy is basically to do with cost benefit analysis, right? So we're saying that the cost of collecting the taxes should not outweigh the benefit of doing so, right? So what you're saying is we know the benefits of taxes, for example, running the government, right? So we want to make sure that the cost of collecting, because you know that there will be cost of collecting. This system of collecting will actually incur some cost. So we want to make sure that the cost of us collecting the money from people should not overweigh the benefit from collecting this. In other words, the tax benefit should overweigh the benefit, the cost of collecting the money. That's basically it. Those are the 4 canons of taxes as suggested by Adam Smith. Now let us look at those that were suggested by not Adam Smith. I think I forgot to edit. These are introduced by other economists like Bastable, right? The first is elasticity. Elasticity. So elasticity is to do with the nature of the tax, right? The nature of tax. In other words, taxation should be elastic in its nature, in the sense that more revenue is automatically collected from income of people when it rises. So it is elastic. Elastic. When income of people rises, automatically you should collect a lot of a lot of money from them. If the income of people decreases, automatically it should adjust. You should collect less, right? That's elasticity. Another thing is productivity. Productivity is to do with that tax must yield sufficient revenue and not adversely affect the production in the economy. Yes, we want to collect money from people. At the same time, we don't want the people and companies to be adversely affected. For example, we're talking about a company, say, a company that produces, for example, we could talk about, let's assume, any company that produces, right? Maybe I'm running out of business. Let's say Universal Industry. So we want to collect sufficient money from these guys, but at the same time, usati titenge ndirama zambiri kuti mpaka these guys akaniko bank operate. Right? We want to make sure now we're collecting money from these guys, but at the same time, whatever money they have, they can be able to sustain their production, right? Sustain their business, right? That's to do with productivity. Being able to balance collecting sufficient revenue at the same time, not adversely affecting the production that affect the economy as well. Let's look at another canon, which is comprehensibility, right? We want to make sure that the tax system must be understood by all taxpayers. That's comprehensibility. Simplicity. This implies that the tax system should be fairly simple to the taxpayer, right? If it is complicated, it can lead to malpractices such as invasion and avoidance. So tax system ingokhala simple to understand, right? That means people will not run away from paying tax. Koma ikakhala complicated, that's when kumabwela things like evasion and avoidance. And lastly, second but last, let's look at diversity, right? So we're looking at that a good tax system should incorporate a broad taxpayers base and source of income, e.g., employment from investment. So we're saying that you should make sure that your tax system should cover a broad taxpayers base or sources of income. So the pay looks at employment, right? We can look at the INA, right? Like withholding investment, right? Withholding like provision tax and so on, right? We have INA, excise duty, right? It's diverse, right? We have VAT that is being charged on the products or services. That's being diverse. What are you focus on? Tax system charge about employees' income. No, that's not diverse, right? It has to be diverse, right? Diverse. It means that if a lot of people are not employed, you still collect money from other stuff. And lastly, let us look at flexibility. Flexibility, right? It should be easy for tax authority to revise the tax structure. It should not be rigid, right? You are able to actually able to revise the tax. All right. Let us reduce our taxes. Like, they actually year on year amabanga revise my income taxes, right? Amabanga revise my income taxes. What? Just because the tax system is basically flexible. Chikairo's rigid nekuti take. So those are the canons as suggested by other economists. Let us finish up this session by looking at examples of taxes, right? The first example of tax is income tax, right? These are taxes levied or charged on income of individuals and businesses. These are income taxes are taxes that are charged on individuals and businesses. So that are income tax, including corporate tax payee. Those are income taxes. Now we also have another example which are called property taxes. Property taxes are just taxes that are levied on properties of people. Like if you own land, right? If you own a building, they'll charge you tax. Like for example, city rates, town rates, right? Those are some of the property rates. Why do they collect these, right? They are raising revenue, which are used to provide services like cleaning and sewage system. So they are collecting this to make sure that they are able to provide these public services, right? My city rates, right? My ground rates, all these are under property rates. And this is another example of tax. We also have poll tax. Poll tax was a tax that was there. It phased out now, kulibe panopa. But it's another example of tax. And this one was basically a tax that was collected on the basis of a fixed amount per individual due to pay tax. It is called poll tax because it is payable by individual who have the right to vote. Tai ya MCP, right? Tai ya Kamuzu, people were supposed to pay taxes in form of kudula kadi, right? These are called poll taxes, right? So aliyense kwambira wazaka zina zake, right? Was obliged or obligated to actually to pay this tax. Aisamena country tax imeneyi alisamena kupereka. I remember amafuna so abange introduce kuti aise citizen zipereka 1000 pachaka. So those would be poll tax. I think it sinavomerezedwe, right? So that's basically it. So kudula sonko, kudula makadio, those ones were called poll taxes, right? Poll taxes. So they were just based on people that who had the right to vote. Ndekuti aisamene zaka 18 was supposed to kudula makadi amenewa. Now, sales tax, also called value added tax. These are taxes that are charged on the value of goods or services, right? So these are charged on the value of goods or services. VAT, also called sales tax. Worthy tax, these are taxes that are charged on the worth of individuals either at the time of death or on transfer of property. So we are looking at worthy tax being taxes that are being charged either muntu akamwalira. So muntu akamwalira ndipo katundu amene is being transferred to anthu amene asalira, right? Anthu amene asalira, right? Pamayenera pabwere chani? Worth tax. And this is called estate duty. Estate duty, right? Or when you are transferring an asset, for example, if I have a building, I want to transfer to somebody else, I'll have to pay a tax. and these are called capital gains. We'll look at that as we go through the chapter. And custom duties, these are taxes that are levied on the value of goods that have been imported, right? All the goods that have been imported are actually charged this amount called custom duty. And lastly, excise duty is taxes that are charged on certain specified locally manufactured or imported goods. So excise duty, kunena chilungamo chona kuti these ones are charged on zinthu zimene akuzona kuti they are undesirable, right? Are undesirable. They are locally produced or imported, they will charge this excise duty. For example, spirits amacharge excise duty, right? Kaya pali makampani ena amapanga recycle material, right? Ndikumagulisa, right? These companies amacharge amaziwa kuti makampani amenewa afuna kupanga discourage fake ineyo ngati ndikukagula tela loti angolipanga refabric, right? There's a high probability kuti litha kuchita ngozi, right? Because silanyuwani, right? So they actually do this to discourage zinthu zina. Kaya ukawapanga import galimoto yakalekale, right? Imakhala ndi these taxes. If you import galimoto yatsopano, latest car, it will be cheaper as opposed to kugula yakalekale. For example, 1999. For example, amanena kuti, for example, fuel consumption or izitulusa ma carbon dioxide, right? So to discourage this, they also impose this tax. So that's where we're gonna stop from. Thank you.